Hi, lovelies! I just finished The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So, let's get into it. I did actually really like this book. I officially got it for like my birthday. A friend gave it to me, and I sped through it. I did really like it. It's a very interesting concept of price and immortality and the wanting to be remembered. And it's so interesting. So I'll start from the beginning. At first, we see Addie running through the woods, escaping something. And it just draws you in and like sinks its claws to you. You go, okay, there's a mystery. And it follows all the way through until like the last few pages. And I love that. I love that we stay mysterious for so long. So, and then we find out more. We come back to the present. The wedding was taking place in like July 29th, 1714, and then we move forward to about March of 2014. And we see her waking up in a guy's bed, Toby Marsh, and she's there. She has gotten to know this guy multiple times, except every time either he goes into another room, the door closes, or he sleeps, he forgets about her. And this is her curse. Yes, she has immortality, but she will never be remembered. Now, there are ways to skirt her curse, like memories are clear-cut, but ideas are fluid and flowing like water. So she uses that to her advantage to inspire art pieces. Like, I don't know if I can find one here. There's 7 like parts of this book, and at each beginning of each part there's like a artwork, and I do really like that because it immerses you so much into the world, and it's so fun to see. Here we go. Like this one, we can see it, is Addie as the night sky, and it's so cool to see the fact that through her eyes, she thought she was completely forgotten. And then she finds out she can like influence artists and live through their art. And that's so cool to see because we are always being inspired by everything around us. And another part of her curse is she cannot leave any mark. She was a huge artist back in like 1714. And now she can't. Every time she draws something, it disappears. And every time she like breaks something, it puts itself back together. Because that would leave a mark of her existence. And by the nature of what her curse is, she can't leave a mark. She can leave ideas and vague, flowing ideas, but it's more unsatisfying to her, almost in a sense. Not that she doesn't like inspiring artists, it's more this. It's not really her, it's just the idea of her. And going through the book, we find out that back in 1714, she is betrothed to a guy who lost his wife and is old and crusty and gross. And she really does not want to marry him. She wants to go to her father, to Le Mans, and see the city and see life and not live and die in the same 10-meter plot. She wants more for her life than what is being offered. So, the day of her wedding, she books it. The first opportunity she can get, she books it to the woods and starts running because she just does not want to marry this man. And eventually, night falls. And she has this old woman who's a friend of hers named Estelle. And Estelle is very pagan, while the rest of the town is super duper Catholic. And she teaches her when she's like very young to pray to the old gods, because Addie asked. And she says never to pray to the gods who answer after dark. And the day of her wedding, she doesn't notice the sun sets, and before her wedding, she's begging, sacrificing everything that she can to the gods just to not marry Roger. And the night of her wedding, she sacrifices the ring her father made for her. And he comes. The Darkness is a very interesting character because he is not human. He is an amalgamation of both the afterlife and inspiration, and I don't want to say chaos because that's not the right word, but it's just the dark incarnate, the night and darkness and like that vibe wrapped into this being. And before this, Addie has taken all of the guys in her town and taken the good parts and left the bad and created this fictional man that she draws and knows the contours so well that she doesn't need to think. Her hand can just draw him. And he takes that shape. And she begs for life. And at first, he's like, no, thank you, no, okay. That's not a good deal for me, thanks, boo. And then she offers her soul when she is done with her life. And he kisses her and agrees. And several hundred years later, she's living. She's seen elephants, she's seen the sea, she's seen movies being invented, she's seen everything, which is bittersweet in a way because she wants to leave marks on the world. She wants to be part and remembered, but she's happy with seeing things in new places because there's always something new to find. And mostly every year on July 29th, he comes back to see her and wonders if she's ready to give him her soul. And it starts as a game between them. Mind you, she does not like him. She kind of hates him in a way. And he is this primordial being that cannot die and maybe has always been. It's very unclear, which I do really like because it really adds to the mystery for that. And he basically almost toys with her. It's very cat and mouse. Two very different beings. And as the book goes on, they start falling in love. Now, I use love very loosely when it comes to the Darkness, or as we later learn that Addie gave her drawing name Luce for Lucian, and then he kind of takes on that name, and it kind of changes from Lucian to Lucifer. And I do really like his character. I have a very much a love-hate relationship with him because he is so interesting, but also he does not love her, but he cares for her in a way that's very close to obsession. And it's in that gray area where, yes, it started as a cat and mouse game, but at the end, when she is about ready to sacrifice everything for Henry, he hesitates. And it's a lot about the darkness and the light between Addie and Luce almost. She wants to live and have fun, and he is there. He's here to have fun. And it's very cat and mouse again. And at the end, it was really interesting because Addie knows him so intimately, and yet he doesn't really know her. I mean, Luce can feel kind of her emotions, and when she's about ready to slip into something else, like for desperation to move on from this life, but she still says no to him because she wants to live, and also for spite, but And Luce, as this character, moves on throughout the story. It's a very... He's obsessed with her, but he doesn't know her. She can read every emotion through his eyes, but he can't do the same for her. And it's a lot of the difference between humanity and divinity. And as the story goes on, Addie realizes that she herself is just no longer human. She is something else entirely. She doesn't have the name for it. And it's a lot of her just being comfortable in her own skin and enjoying life. And sometimes Luce will just leave for decades at a time. Like the longest was 30 whole years, sometimes 50. And I'm pretty sure it might have been the longest was 50 years, but I digress. And around the 70s, she starts to fall for Luce. And with her curse, she can't own anything. She can't show up on film. Every Polaroid squishes her face until it's unrecognizable, except for her 7 freckles, which Luce absolutely adores. And there's a really cool quote, which is, "I would rather the clouds blot out the stars than cover your freckles." Like, I am delusional about Luce, but he's so interesting. And it's every character I really like because they're so complex. And it's just so cool because like you kind of see into each of their heads a little bit, even if the main perspectives are both from Henry and Addie and like a third POV type of thing. But he gives back her ring, and every time she puts it on, he is summoned to her. And she sees this cute little leather jacket, and she's like, damn, I wish I had that. And he gives it to her. And she can't leave either behind. And he buys her a house, and for a time, she thinks they're in love. But she comes to realize it's just another game to possess her as a possession, something to be had. Well, Lucy is as more relishing, wanting. He says he is observed human love, but he doesn't really get it because he is not human himself, and the fact that he cannot have human emotions, but it's almost as if he cares for her in his own way. Now, this is unhealthy. If it wasn't in a book, don't go for the toxic people. Be with someone who knows you and trusts you and is not manipulative. Don't gaslight your partners. Thank you. But he slips, and he lets out that it's been a game. All the nice dates, taking her to the opera, giving her beautiful flowing gowns has been a game to get her. So she leaves. She burns down the house. And she doesn't know who set the fire, either her or Luce himself, but the fire starts. And for 30 years, they don't see each other. Granted, he is around and they can kind of feel each other, but Luce is more just watching, observing her instead of with her. And then everything changes one day when she goes into a bookshop and she takes the Odyssey in Greek and books it out of the store, and Henry catches her saying, "You have to pay for that." And of course, she can't afford it because what's the bother with money if you can't keep it? She can't keep a job because of the nature of her curse, and every time she steals something, they forget about her, which she does what she can to survive. And it's heartbreaking to see because she wants to live a normal life, but she can't. And Henry, kind of seeing that she can't pay it, goes, "Okay, you can have that. It's fine." And so she goes off, and thinking that he has forgotten about her, comes back to try to get another book because it's something to do. And he looks at her and goes, "You stole that yesterday." And she's taken aback because no one has ever remembered her before. And they start seeing each other, and eventually she tells him everything. She tells her story to him, and he takes to writing it down, and they go on dates. She uses his finger to write her name and draw again because, yeah, she's controlling his finger, his hand, but he's the one leaving the mark, so therefore it negates the curse. There's a loophole. She's found a loophole so she can draw again. 300 years, and she hasn't drawn in that time. And at this point in the story, she is 323 years old. At least mentally, she's constantly 23, but it's kind of in that paradox of vampires where it's, are you 100 and something, or are you 17? Because yes, your body is the same, but your mind is so far beyond that, and it's a lot of, it's kind of in a gray area. Now, eventually, she learns that Henry himself has a deal, and he gave up a year of his life to be enough, because he has never been enough. He has never been enough for his parents. Has never been enough for any partner. He proposed to his girlfriend, and she said no because he just wasn't enough. And he goes up to a roof, and he's about ready to, when Luce comes. And at this point, Henry just wants it to be done. He would have given a second to live for just to be enough. And he accepts, and he's going to watch, and eventually Addie learns about it. But at first, she thinks she has a lifetime with him. But she doesn't. And he doesn't tell her because he doesn't want her to grieve early. He wants her to have somewhat of a normal life for once. And they have fun. She is living the perfect mundane life that she's enjoying. She's living. She's seeing things that she hasn't seen before. And Henry is finally enough the way he is. And a lot of people say Henry is boring, which, yeah, sure, compared to Luce, but that's like comparing a gigantic redwood to a tiny little twig. You can't compare divinity and humanity yet. Humanity? Yeah, humanity. But they're different. They're fundamentally different. And it's the mundanity of it that is so intriguing. Henry is mundane because that's just how it is. I actually don't think he's boring at all. I think he's a very complex and interesting character. It's just we only see snippets of his life. He is not the main character. Addie is. And then Luce and Henry fall just beneath her. But he is so human, and it really hit home, and it hits home for a lot of people of his story. And it's a lot of so Henry represents the life that Addie wants. She doesn't want to be forgotten. He remembers her. Okay, so like the grounds of Henry's curse is basically this. Is Henry in himself will always be seen as what people want to see. They can see a perfect son that they never had, a perfect son, a perfect guy, and he can see their eyes clouding over. And it's hard for him because he knows it's not real. But when he meets Addie, her eyes are perfectly clear because the only thing that she needs is somebody to remember. So their curses work really well together. And of course, this is later discovered to be Luce's meddling once again. He didn't initially present the deal to Henry as a way to get at Addie. It was just a deal. Luce is always making deals for time and talent and strange for souls, and it's just, it was heartbreaking to see, because at the end, when Addie and Henry are back on the roof where his deal started, he really thought it was it. And then nothing happened. Because 3 days prior, Addie goes to Luce and exchanges herself, not her soul, but to be with him, to be with Luce, as long as he will have her. And he agrees. As long as Henry knows and remembers her, she will be with him. And then Henry takes all the notebooks, all 6 of them, that he wrote about Addie and her life and her story, and creates The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, with Addie LaRue as the author. Because, yes, he wrote it, but it's not his story. He was just the means of which she could tell her story and be remembered. And it's a lot of happiness for her. She sees the book when it gets published, and she's like, wow, I'm remembered. And then Luce comes in and is all like huggy on her. But he himself taught her that words have meaning. And it's not the hidden meanings, it's what the words say. And the deal she made with Luce in exchange for Henry living is this: she will only stay with him as long as he will have her. Now, she has lived for 300 years, and she can play the long game. And she plans to set him up. Later down the road, maybe 20 years from now, or however long it will take, he will grow bored of her and get mad. And then he will cast her off and she will be free once again. And it's not the ending she had wanted. She wanted a life with Henry, but it's the ending she got. She got the best of what was provided to her, and it makes the most logical sense for an ending for this book, because in The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, there is not really a definitive happy ending. It's more of a continuation. And this is a standalone book, and I would love to have more books to read, but it feels thinnish almost. This being a standalone book, I want to know more, but I am content with what I have for what we got as readers. And it's a lot about just, I loved this book. I knew from the very first sentence that I would love this book. I give it a 5 out of 5 stars, always. Or in this case, 7 out of 7 freckles. But I do love this book. And it's not an end. It's just a continuation.